Probably even more so for you guys than
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Blacksburg Planning Commission, which are held here on the first Tuesday of each month at the Roger E. Hedgepeth Chambers of the Blacksburg Municipal Building, 300 South Main Street. Citizens may address the Planning Commission during specified times on the agenda. Podium. State your name and address. Direct comments only to the commission. Please limit speaking time to a maximum of 3 minutes and speak only once during a specific hearing or comment period. A wireless microphone is available to anyone requesting assistance. Please silence all cell phones, show respect for all speakers, and allow all opinions to be expressed in a tolerant atmosphere. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Britt?
Here.
Mr. Ehrman?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Irvine?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Kassoff?
Present.
Ms. Reinhardt? Ms. Walker?
Here.
I'm here. We have a quorum.
Excellent. First item is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on our consent agenda. The first item is approval of the Planning Commission minutes from March 5th, 2024. The action is to approve. Second is AFD 24-1 ordinance 2052, which is a request to withdraw 3.03 acres from the Agricultural and Forestal District on 701 Bishop Road for Jim and Carol Berger. The action there is to schedule a public hearing for May 7th. And the third is zoning ordinance amendment ZOA, an amendment to the town of Blacksburg zoning ordinance to create a new small lot option in the R4 low density residential zoning district to allow smaller lot sizes. And the action there is to cancel tonight's public hearing, April 2nd public hearing, and reschedule for May 7, 2024. Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to our public hearings tonight, the single public hearing that we were to have was Plat 2320 Glade Spring Crossing Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Review for 176 lots on 45 acres at 1006 Glade Spring Road. And we have a staff presentation by Kenzie O'Shea.
Thank you. This is the preliminary plat review for Glade Spring Crossing, which was rezoned to planned residential in 2023. The aerial imagery on the screen shows the site outlined in blue with its primary road frontage on Glade Road at the bottom of the screen and secondary frontages on Shadow Lake Road and Village Way South. The rezone approved the development of 176 mixed-income, mixed-unit residential dwellings, including duplexes and townhomes, in addition to single-family residential. There's one vehicle entrance on Glade Road that is proposed. The development also includes a minimum of 35% open space. This is the lot layout and open space sheet from the plat set showing the configuration of roads, the lots, and the open space. For orientation, Glade Road is on the left-hand side of the screen and US 460 bypass is at the bottom of the screen. The state views subdivisions as by right uses of land, provided that all of a locality's regulations and standards are met. If there are no deficiencies in the review of the plat, it must be approved. However, any variance requests are discretionary decisions. The applicant submitted a plat set for administrative review per the approved development agreement prior to the initiation of the Planning Commission review. Through the administrative reviews, the applicant corrected the deficiencies noted by staff in their comment letters. Once the plat was in an approvable state, that is, that there were no other deficiencies noted, the process for the Planning Commission review began. The application does also include 2 variance requests that were not known at the time of the rezone. The first variance request pertains to landings at intersections for bike trails. In order for the bike trail that connects Glade Spring Drive with Village Way South to have an overall grade of less than 15%, which is the town standard, the landings at the top and the bottom of the slope where the trail intersects with Glade Spring Drive at the cul-de-sac and Village Way South must be greater than 2%, which is the town standard. The applicant proposes that the landings would be no greater than 5% at these 2 intersections shown in red on the screen. The second variance pertains to the water and sewer standard specifications and the subdivision standard for providing public utility easements. The applicant stated in their justification that a low retaining wall up to 2.5 feet in height is necessary for the rear yards of several lots to be graded to be usable and to reduce erosion. The location of the wall intersects the side public utility easements as seen in this slide in the red. The applicant has indicated that conduit for utilities would be provided in these locations to allow for utilities to cross the wall if needed in future. Staff further notes that the wall should be maintained by the homeowners association and not individual homeowners or the town. In summary, Planning Commission is asked to review the preliminary plat for its adherence to standards in the zoning. Planning Commission is also asked to evaluate the 2 variance requests. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have of staff.
Questions for Kinsey? So where did it fall out with respect to the homeowners association?
The homeowners association will be in charge of maintaining the wall. That will be a condition of the variance approval.
That'll be a condition of approval. Okay, great. Any additional questions? Great. We will hear from the applicant, Michael Formica of WK Dixon.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Formica with WK Dixon, project engineer on this project. Kinsey did a great job of summing all of it up, so I'll be able to keep this pretty quick. 176 units, 44 on the south side of the development, 132 on the north side of the development. Just to relate that to the overall plan, you'll see north and south on either side of this heavy dashed black line. In terms of how this development will be built and phased, these green, the green line represents Glade Spring Drive, which will all be constructed during phase 1 of the development. The other streets in purple are phase 2. Next, I believe, is the bikeway variance. So that is located at the end of Glade Spring Drive next to Village Way South. The 2 red boxes on this plan view identify the landing locations. The 2 red lines on the profile represent the landing in profile. And so the variance will be that red segment cannot exceed 5% for a length of 15 feet, as opposed to 2% per the code. Regarding the public utility easement variance, the wall is proposed in that same general area backing up to the village subdivision along lots 169 to 175. I've zoomed in here just showing those lots, and as Kinsey said, we're proposing a wall of 2.5 feet in height. Will include conduit to allow any utilities to pass through in these side is my presentation. Any questions?
Questions for the applicant? So who's going to size that conduit? Are you going to work with town staff to size it?
Yeah, and I can also check with any of the private utilities, cable, telephone, whoever may be utilizing that. I'm imagining it's going to be probably 2-inch conduit, could be 4.
So no wet utilities?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Additional questions? Great. Thank you. With that, we will have public comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission on this particular public hearing can do so now.
Hello, my name is Casey Hodges. I live at 1223 Village Way South. I want to remind you what the Code of Blacksburg says is the definition of a variance. Variances should be authorized in cases of unusual situations where strict adherence to the general regulations in this ordinance would result in substantial injustice or hardship. For the rezoning application for this property, there were 14 variances already requested and approved by Town Council. There were many objections by the public to the number and the scope of these variances, and many of the variances were significant and were asked for simply to reduce the cost of the project. not for unusual situations, but just simply cost. And to accommodate the need for lower cost housing and the affordable housing, this litany of variances was accepted by the town, who partnered with the developer. They include cuts made to stormwater infrastructure, street trees, landscape buffering, as well as increases to densities and impervious areas on the steepest slopes of these projects. All of these changes can lead to the potential for increased erosion, yet they were granted under the need to reduce cost. It also included an ask stating that they would leave a 15-foot public utility easement on all bordering exterior property lines while requesting smaller PUEs on the interior lines of their new lots. Now the developer is asking for yet another variance, this time to build a wall in the existing PUE along the outer border that they already said they would protect. And the reason given for the applicant as the request for this variance inside the wall is simply to minimize the potential for erosion. This reasoning does not warrant a variance. It is not an unusual situation, an injustice, or a hardship. And walls are expensive. Why did the applicant ask for so many cost-reducing variances in their initial rezoning process in the name of affordable housing, many of which would have mitigated erosion problems, and now want to build a wall on the flatter side of the property? It makes no sense. They're also asking for the HOA to maintain this wall and take on its maintenance cost and liability. The HOA will be mainly comprised of people that live in workforce and affordable housing, and they're already being asked to maintain a regional wet pond and support a large managed successive growth plan. It's a lot for any HOA to take on. And a potential to minimize erosion does not warrant the approval of a variance for the construction of an expensive wall inside a PUE to be permanently maintained by an HOA after the applicant asked for so many cost reductions and variances in the application process. Also, the wall in the PUE will cut off or severely limit any future potential connections of the Village Way South homes from the future proposed pump station below. The step steg systems on Village Way South are now on average 20 years old. Replacement and maintenance of this system can be expensive, and it's the town system. The request for the wall variance states that there will not be conduit for wet utilities, as he just mentioned, and it can be segmentally removed if needed, but whose cost would that be? The town's. The town should have unlimited access to their public utility easement, unencumbered by a wall that is not needed for erosion purposes. Please consider the fact that the reasoning for this request does not meet the town's criteria for a variance. It impacts everybody around it, the long-term cost of it and the maintenance being dumped on a homeowners association that really can't afford it, and the impacts that it has to the town in the future. And please deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this particular hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
My name's Chris Bundren. I live at 1219 Village Way South. I also wanted to comment about the variance of the wall property. My concern is with the septic system and how the town has to maintain that. Just recently, there was an emergency where my pump failed. The town had to come in on the weekend and pump it out. By the time they could get the large vacuum truck here at the location, it was dark. They had to navigate through that narrow PVC section. And so my concern is installing a wall is going to make that even more hazardous and more likelihood that, the town's not going to be able to properly access those systems. And any delay in that can result in, the sewage backing up into our houses. So that's what I'm concerned. What happens to the water that flows over the wall? What happens to the water that's below the wall? Currently, right now, if there's flash flooding, there's water will tend to creek back there in the back of my property. And the concern is now you're elevating the neighboring property, which right now is level with mine, to create more water coming in and could back up into my property and also affect the access for the step sewage utilities, which could create, unstable ground and more disruption issues for the town to access properly. And then finally, like Casey mentioned, having the homeowners association responsible for that does seem like an extra requirement that, they're not going to be able to handle, effectively, quickly if there's an issue. Being able to take the wall down isn't going to be, a quick solution if there's an emergency with the systems behind our houses. To me, a better option for erosion would be to plant vegetation and trees versus creating an elevated surface that's going to disrupt the natural flow of the area. So I would propose that you would deny the variance for the wall. Thank you.
Yeah. Any additional public comment? Okay, hearing none, applicant, would you care to rebut any of the comments made during public comment?
So I guess first I'll just talk about the context of this area or this north side of the development. Currently, there's a lot of elevation change from the rear village lot lines down to the Creek Valley overlay in the floodplain. And so what makes this condition difficult to deal with is you can only make up so much grade dropping down there just using a 3-to-1 slope, which is typically what's most easily maintained. And so the best location for us to make up that grade is in this particular spot. You start getting into, you don't want a wall down in a floodplain. You don't want a wall right off someone's backyard where someone is sitting above. So this is to bring it back to what this does to our site in relation to the village. We are not sitting our homes higher than the village. Our homes are sitting lower. So this retaining wall is actually in a cut condition. So we will not be sending water back towards the village. It will be anything coming from the village will be just straight down into our site where we have to design conveyances, and we've proposed storm drains to pick up any of that runoff. The other thing I would note is that the wall is located outside of our rear setback. So on this side of the property, we have a 20-foot rear setback. So this wall is not in close proximity to any access path that you're using to access the step steg tanks back there. Actually, in reality, there's not an existing PUE within this development's side of the property. So we're expanding the PUE along that rear village property line. So in my opinion, we're actually improving access to those step steg tanks. So, yeah.
Questions for the applicant?
Can I ask a question to staff?
Yes, please do.
Kenzie, can you show that during work session, we talked a lot about the wall and the PUEs and how the PUE variance is actually
For the
yeah,
side,
if you
yes.
can re-explain that, I think that's helpful. It helped me a lot understand what was going on.
So this slide indicates the wall location in blue and the public utility easement locations roughly in orange. So you can see the wall is outside of this rear public utility easement here, but it cuts across these side public utility easements as it goes across those property lines.
So the variance is really impacting the properties on the development.
Yes, it does not impact the Village Way, the Village of Toms Creek properties.
And in the development, would there be any requirement to service sewer related systems through that?
No, the rest of those major wet utilities have already been designed to not need that location.
Right, okay. That helps re-clarify for me. Thank you.
Can I add something?
Sure.
So going into the work session, we had received an email from a citizen, and she had brought up what Casey had brought up about that rear setback. And I went in there thinking that the wall was in the rear setback in the PUE. And so the citizen that emailed us, as well as Casey and others, I think we were all confused about where the wall was. So I think we got a lot of clarification in the work session that made us understand that really this involves the side setback.
Yeah.
So, and I think it made us all feel a little better about it. So.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll close applicant rebuttal. Do we have a motion? Discussion.
I move Planning Commission approve Plat 23-20, including both variances that were presented, specifically 5-503E regarding the greater than 2% landing grade, and 5-901 related to the retaining wall in the PUE.
And
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion?
I
All those opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our second item on the public hearing agenda, which is zoning ordinance amendment, ZOA 61, an amendment to the town of Blacksburg zoning ordinance to create a new small lot option in the R4 low density residential zoning district. And as mentioned in the consent agenda, the public hearing has been canceled, and the motion is to reschedule that public hearing for May 7th. So now we'll move on, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to citizen comment. Citizens can address the commission on any issue at this time. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to unfinished business, zoning ordinance and review committee. We have not met. Yeah. Historic or design review board?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Wonderful. Montgomery County Planning Commission?
That was also me. There's actually there was some discussion about the future of what they were going to be doing over the next 12 months. And they're going to be doing a new comprehensive plan. It seems like I don't know if it's always like this, but it seems like the next 12 months are going to be very much about the next 20 years, or at least their kind of high-level approach to the next 20 years. They've gathered different stakeholders, and yeah, we'll see.
Right. Thank you. Any additional items from planning commissioners? Great. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Chair's report. I have none. Planning director's report.
Just a reminder that there is the Planning Commissioners Dinner and Training opportunity that Casey sent some information about. That's on April 17th on Wednesday. And if folks haven't already, if they can let Casey know by the 10th, then she can get everybody who can attend to, registered for that.
Thank you.
Housing is one of the topics. I was asking about that during the way.
Town council report.
I have nothing.
Great. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you for attending.